Hi, everyone.
We're live.
I'm
Sorry, go ahead.
No, I'm Margaret Strauss.
I'm Brandon Tessers. We are both licensed therapists, but this is not therapy for very, very many reasons. This is instead just an open conversation. Margaret and I are here talking with one another, and we are talking with all of you. Of course, we don't know who you are, so we're just doing our best to make guesses about what you're interested in, how we're coming across to you, how we're impacting you. For those of you who are willing and able to participate in the chat, we appreciate that because it gives us more information on which to base those guesses about what you're interested in, how we're impacting you, and so on. We work with a private therapy company practice called Effective Artistry. Our office is located in Northbrook, Illinois. We do individual, couples, group, and family therapy with people in the states of Illinois and Wisconsin. We also work with some coaches who can work with people all over the world via the internet. All of our coaches are trained as executive functioning coaches, but they each have their own additional specialties. We have business and professional coach, parenting coach, and artist and creativity coach. We will do our best to read out the comments as they come in because we are live streaming on 3 different platforms simultaneously, and each of you will only see the comments that are coming from your whatever platform you're watching us through. So we like to read everything out so that everybody's on the same page. Please don't hesitate. If you have something to say, jump right in. Margaret and I are going to talk about whatever we're talking about because otherwise we'd just be sitting here quietly and that would be weird. But it's not, ask questions or throw in jokes or comments or whatever. Don't worry about like staying on topic or whether we're talking about what you want. We're here for you. Margaret and I get to talk quite frequently outside of this. This conversation is for the benefit of everybody who's watching. So let us know. We'd rather go where you're going. That it?
You got it all. Yep.
Nice. Well, it's good to have you back. It's been a little bit without you, and I'm glad to have you here with me.
I know it's been a while. I don't know. I feel like I'm like out of it. Like I'm like, what am I supposed to do or say? Even though I did it for like such a long time that now I'm like, I don't know. But
it's like the standard joke on like shows and movies is like people being like, I don't know what to do with my hand. As soon as you start thinking about what you're doing, then all of a sudden you're like, I don't know what to do with any of the stuff that I don't usually think about.
Right. Well, I'm sure a part of that is because I've been in my head for quite some time that I'm like, what do I do? And I'm looking at myself like, hello, like, it's okay though. I'm doing okay.
Yeah. Well, good. I'm glad. And honestly, there's so much. I'm good. Yeah, I'm working from home today, which it's nice that I am finally like living back in my home. We've been having work done, and so we're back in. And part of that work was having a home office put together. So I'm in my home office, which is really nice. I've never had an actual home office before. It's always been like, in the basement or the bedroom. I also have a computer in or whatever. Sorry, I'm just putting something.
I didn't know where you were. It looks so different.
Yeah, and it's not quite all put together yet, but it's put together enough to work from here. And it snowed, and underneath the snow, so I guess first last night it did a freezing rain and then snowed on top of it.
Mm-hmm.
And we've been moving in, so I'm doing all kinds of projects till the last second because we have friends staying in town with us. So I was in my mind, I was like, I'm working from home for the first part of the day, and then I'll go in for the stream. And I gave myself, I live very close, and I gave myself like 10 minutes to get there, and then went out and my car is buried, and I was like, I don't have enough time to dig it out and still get there. So first time doing the stream from here.
I do want to say, likely story for me. And even my fiance was like, Margaret, you should get out. You need to go outside earlier and like take care of the ice. And I'm like, yeah, I will. I thought if I gave myself, 10 extra minutes before I was going to workout class, it'd be enough time. Oh my God. And I felt better because everyone was late. So it wasn't that bad. But like my windshield wipers were just like frozen. And I was just sitting out there for like 15, 20 minutes, just waiting. And yeah.
The freezing rain is so hard to get off the car. You have to scrape like every inch. And I had to, just compounding how silly it was for me to not take that into consideration is that I did that with our other car this morning because I had to take my son to orchestra at 7:30 a.m. So I'm out there in my like robe I don't even have my gloves here right now. We're in the middle of moving, and we were not anticipating like winter weather. So I'm like, you have to brush all the snow off and then just like chip away at the ice, and we're running late and I'm trying to get in there. And I got like a little window that I could see out of in the front and on the sides, and it was not safe. But I was only driving him 300 meters or whatever. So I was like, we can do it.
Well, that's good. Just on the topic of this, I've been trying to have a lot more slower mornings, and I never realized, because it's been like that for some time, how like when I don't plan for something and I'm like 10 minutes late and I'm rushing, it just like throws me all off. Because not even that, then I forgot I didn't have any windshield wiper fluid, and I like can't see. I'm like, oh my God. I'm like, what is going on? Just like, and that's why, I came to work like 2.5 hours early before my session, which that is pretty early. I used to go early. I haven't for a while, but I was like, I need this slow morning because I didn't have it earlier. I'm going to just be here and have a slow morning. And it was nice. That was nice.
Yeah, I'm glad.
I felt that.
I mean, who doesn't love having time in the morning to like kind of put yourself together, like become a whole person for the day or whatever. But it's nice to do it at the office when you get there early. If you have the right kind, like we have nice offices that are our personal offices and stuff. Not everybody's work is that, but it's nice. I'm glad you were able to do that.
Me too. And it's funny when you were saying like everyone likes the slow morning. If you had asked me that a year ago, I would say you are crazy. I was like, I got to get up, I got to go, all of that stuff. And even with this little hiccup this morning, I could just feel myself just getting so frustrated, so just anxious, so upset, and being like, whoa, like having these slow mornings really do help. 2.5 hours early, that was pretty early, but it was still really nice. And yes, I know not everyone has the offices we do, but just like the dim lighting and like my ritual I do with the tea and with
making your tea and
all of that stuff. So
sitting in your nice comfy chair or couch or whatever, just is nice. I would do it so much more honestly if I didn't have 3 young kids, where like my mornings are wake up and like get breakfast going and get people dressed. And my wife obviously is doing that also and does more than I do, which I very much appreciate. But still, it's until the boys are off to school, and our youngest is still not in kindergarten yet. So his school starts like 30 minutes later than the others. So he doesn't leave until like 8:45. Until the kids are all off to school, there's no like getting myself ready or whatever. Of course, if I had a job where it's like I need to be clocking in at 9 or it would be a problem, then we would do it differently. But we don't have to do it that way. So I'm helping out and stuff. But yeah, it's not until then that I finally get to like sit down and drink my tea and, put myself together.
Yeah. I don't envy you for that.
It sounds like if you had told me about it back before I had kids, I would have been like, no, that's a nightmare. One time, Susan and I, my wife and I, before we had kids, her brother was training for the marathon and got stuck on some, run, and knee was hurting or whatever, and called us to come pick him up on a Sunday morning. And it was like 9:30 when he called, and I was furious. I was like, who calls someone at 9:30 on a Sunday morning? Like, absurd. And now it's like the idea of sleeping. I couldn't, even if I wanted to, sleep until 9:30 anymore. So you get used to it. Humans are adaptable.
Yeah, I guess as soon as I said that, definitely adaptability, because I think I slept until 10 a.m. like 2 weeks ago, and I was distraught. I was like, my whole morning is ruined. I can't do it because my sleep in latest is normally 9. I think I was that's why. It was the time change. I'll blame.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so I don't feel that bad. But waking up at 10, I was just, and like, my fiance's still sleeping, and I'm like, oh no, what am I going to do? Like, definitely adaptable, because I think I never thought, like, I don't know. I was like, what's the point of like waking up early in the morning? Like, if I work at like 10, why would I get up at 7:30? And I think it's like, and I don't know, especially I think in the job that we do, I definitely, like when I was working at Walgreens or something, yeah, I'd roll out of bed and go there and stock some shelves or whatever. But having to like, be fully present and wanting to be fully present with clients and everything. Like I need that slow morning because I look back at like a year ago when I would just get out of bed like 30, 40 minutes before work and go into the office, and just how like, oh boy, I'm having an epiphany. Oh, this happens every time. I miss being on here. Every time I'm on the screen, epiphany every time in the middle of something. I remember back then I was like, I can't be present with my clients. Like I'm like scattered. I can't just hone in and focus. And then this past year, when I'm giving myself that time and seeing someone or whatever, I can definitely hone in more. I never made that connection actually until right now.
That's cool. I love making connections. Sleep, like people talk about sleep a good amount because it is really important. And even with as much as people talk about it, I do think it's not treated as important enough. Like it's more impactful than people think it is, even though we think it's really impactful. But especially on the waking up side, people don't tend to talk about that part as much. There's a lot of focus on like sleep hygiene in terms of how you go to sleep and what time you go to sleep, how long does it take you to fall asleep, how early or late are you going to bed, whatever. But then the waking up portion is mostly an afterthought. It's like, when do you have to wake up or whatever, right? But it's one of those things, like everybody does it every day. And so we don't think about it as being weird, but it's really weird, right? Like you just stop being conscious and then you start being conscious again.
Right.
And we don't think about it, but like, what is it that your theory, like, do you think your consciousness just ceases to exist for a little while and then comes back into existence? Or is it still there, but just not as connected to your body while it's asleep and then reconnects to it in the morning? Or your consciousness just ceases at the evening and then in the morning you create a whole new one? Or like, whatever it is, it's weird as hell. But like, personally, I find it very useful. This stuff. So if you look up levels of consciousness, that's a whole, like, I don't know if I'd say field, but like it's a whole area of exploration for philosophy. Like clearly there are levels to it. We all know the difference between being awake and being asleep, for example. But most of us also have experiences where it's like there's a difference between different types of sleep. Sometimes it's a sleep where it's like kind of light and fitful, and other times it's like you're out and waking up. It's like, whoa, where am I?
Right.
Especially if you've ever been put under for like surgery or anything.
Oh, that's my biggest fear. Never done that, but that is one of my biggest fears, is being put to sleep.
I've had it once for my wisdom teeth, and it is like that period. Like I'm used to. Because I'm not a very deep sleeper, never have been. So I'm used to like having some awareness of time passing, like even at night, right? Obviously I'll blink out for like a couple hours at a time or whatever, but I have some sense of like where I started. And that though, like they told me to count slowly to 10 and I did. And I was like, I don't feel anything. They're like, do it again. And I started doing it again. And I think I remember getting to like 6. And then the next thing I know, I'm in the like waiting room with my friends picking me up, and it's been a couple hours or whatever. Like that is just wild to just like lose that time. It's as though I didn't exist for that amount of time.
Oh, that's freaky.
But anyway, whatever the method is, like waking up, going from sleep, unconscious, whatever, to conscious is just as much of a process as going from being awake to being asleep. And in like broad strokes terms, we can say, biologically speaking, that these are processes that take like 90-ish minutes on average, all told.
Wait, what processes take 90 minutes?
Going from being awake to asleep or from asleep to awake.
Oh, okay. I'm just making sure. A little spacey. I wanted to double check.
The losing consciousness and gaining consciousness parts of these processes happen in the middle. So when you're going to sleep, there's all kinds of things in your body that change, like tons and tons of things. It's so ridiculously complicated. I don't even know one bit of it, but like all these different systems that are, you could say, shutting down or entering into a different mode or whatever, and they all have to do it in tandem in certain orders. And if anything goes out of order, that's like, sometimes you get that like jerk awake thing because something went out of order, like the dreaming or whatever started before the body was fully kind of paralyzed and whatever. And the moment that we identify as like, that's when I fell asleep, that's when I no longer was awake or conscious or whatever. So all these processes take on average-ish like 90 minutes or so from beginning to end for the whole process. And the losing consciousness part is somewhere in the middle of that there. Sometimes it's on the earlier end, sometimes on the later, but it's not like the last thing that happens. More stuff happens after you are no longer conscious. Same thing with waking up, that it starts before you're awake. The waking, we can, for example, body temperature, I believe, is one where we can monitor people's body temperature, and it'll start ticking up about a half hour before they wake up. So you can predict that person's going to wake up in a half hour when you start to see this change. So becoming conscious isn't the first part of waking up, and it's not the last part of it either. So this thing we're talking about as a slow morning is really like you completing the process of waking up, right? And obviously we have emergency stuff where it's the middle of the night and some alarm goes off or, predator nearby, and we can like jump into alertness and get moving right away. But we're circumventing that whole process, and it puts you in a different state. It makes you less able to do like conscious work. You can physically get moving. Like most people have experienced some version of not becoming conscious until after they've already started moving in some cases. Yeah. Right? You bolt awake, and by the time you are awake, you're already sitting up. Or, especially for my fellow parents out there, there are definitely times where a cry or a noise or whatever, and by the time I'm like conscious of what's happening, I'm already standing up out of bed and like moving in a direction.
Right.
So we can do that, but that's emergency stuff. But that's not ideal. Ideally, we take the time to like fully set up, and so it's not a matter of just like, oh, it's nice. It is nice, but it's nice because it is advantageous.
Right. Something I wanted to add to it. What was I going to say? Oh yeah, okay. This makes sense in my mind. Hopefully I can articulate it good. But I feel like, especially like with me, like having slower mornings, and like, I've cut out caffeine, I've cut out a lot of things that I used to have a lot. So I feel like I'm so much more aware of like my processes in my body. And so I know, as you were saying that, like, I think for me, I need that slow morning because I left. When I get up and I'm like, I feel thirsty. I have to like go to the bathroom. I have to eat something. And I'm like, like I was never used to like feeling all of that because, I was drinking a lot of, it was go, and I was constantly like, drinking coffee, eating crap, I cut out alcohol, drinking. So I don't know, hearing that too, like the slow morning helps me because I think there's a lot of mornings where I wake up and I'm like, oh my God, I'm like freaking out. But it's because no, Margaret, like you are used to like not noticing your body. And now that I am, it's like, okay, I have a glass of water. Okay, I go to the bathroom. Okay, I eat whatever. And that too, I think, I wanted to say without it sounding grotesque. I don't know. This is so funny. Anytime I say the word going to the bathroom, I'm like, oh, that's a bad thing to say.
Yeah, only you do that. Nobody else.
I do. I know, it's so special. But no, that's just something I've been realizing the last few days, I would say, is that the more that I like give myself like that time to just listen to my body, it helps a lot. And I think I always used to say, and I think I said this to you yesterday, how I'm like, man, I miss when I was ignorant and didn't know all my body's processes and could just eat a granola bar through the day. Not good stuff. Terrible. Yeah. But now it's like, actually listening to it, which is, it's been hard to like kind of differentiate between like the physical and the mental, because it's so easy to like feel a physical sensation and be like, oh my God, am I stressed about this? Am I anxious about this? But I don't know. I feel like that slow morning helps, at least me, I'll say, separate it with that. I got real passionate about that real quick.
I'm glad you did. It's worth being passionate about. Honestly, all right, we've all had that situation where like you see somebody and you're like, hey, did you cut your hair? And they're like, yeah, like 3 weeks ago or whatever, right? So the first time we notice something, we operate as though that's the first time it exists. That's just like a silly example of it. But when we're talking about consciousness, right? Until we notice something, it didn't exist. So when we first notice something, especially if we notice it and it's different from what the last time we had noticed that thing, the hair looks different than the last time we had noticed it, we think that something just changed. And oftentimes there was a change, but it was a long time ago. But sometimes it's, you're looking around at a room and you're like, has this room always been this color? And you've been in that room for 2 years and you've just never really noticed it before,
Yeah.
Our culture has a lot about like, man, once you get older, once you're 30, you can't just eat what you want anymore. You can't just drink all night. You get hungover all the time, whatever. And obviously there is that spreads and it sticks because there's truth to the experience. People experience that. And there's truth to the logic behind it that like as your body gets older, it changes, right?
Yeah.
But a lot of this is like, no, that's how it always was. You're just noticing it more now, either because it's more impactful. So like, yeah, I don't really drink anymore. When I was younger and I would drink and get hungover, like that would usually be on a weekend, Friday or Saturday. And the next day I'd be like, this sucks. This is a day where I'm just going to be in bed all day, napping in and out, whatever, because I had that opportunity. So it sucked. It was unpleasant, but also I just like take the day or half the day or whatever to kind of slowly wake up, drink some water, go back to sleep for a couple hours, whatever.
Right.
Then I have kids, and then if I'm hungover and I wake up the next day, it's like I can't just like not get up and like spend the day in and out of bed and like roll out to brunch at 1:30 in the afternoon or whatever. So now I'm like this, but not only does it suck worse because I have to do stuff while I'm feeling it, I can't like just rest my way through it. I'm also noticing it way more. I'm paying much closer attention to it. Mm-hmm. So how much is it that it actually hit me harder when I got older? How much of it is that I notice it more because the structure of my life is different? Hard to say, but I personally think it's a lot of the latter. Same with people being like, I used to be able to eat whatever I wanted, no problem. Now if I eat too much of this, I have stomach troubles the next day. Mm-hmm. A lot of us just always had stomach troubles and you just didn't really pay attention to it, or you thought of it as like random, not as in like, oh, that might have to do with what I ate yesterday. It's like, oh, I got stomach problems today for some unknowable reason. Mm-hmm. And then you get more time and space and you start to put together like, wait a second, there's a pattern here.
Mm-hmm. I wanted to share something that someone told me. Okay, it's you, Brandon, but I wanted to make some magical being know it was you. And I know it's so funny, real quick, I'll pivot. You say things to me, and I know you've said this the 5 years I've been here, and it's starting to click now, but hey, better late than never. It happens. How was I going to say this? Oh, with me being, like I've come to you, outside and being like, I'm feeling all these, like, the physical stuff of my body that I never felt before and just being, like, super upset about it. And I keep trying to remind myself, like, when you're saying, like, when life is better, these things can happen. And it's hard for me to like put that into perspective because I'm sometimes like, great, life is not better because now I'm feeling all of these things and now I have to pay attention to this. But I think, again, like having a job that I enjoy, being able to like have a slow morning and relax, like all the kids, having it distracted me, having like good support systems, having healthy outlets. It's like now I'm paying attention to all of these things that I haven't for like 30 years of my life. And it can get frustrating and it's hard. So I'm happy that, I'm sure you said this to me 5 years ago, but I'm happy we still have these conversations now because I try to look at it like, well, at that time, I would have not even been able to work on that or figure that out. There was no way with how busy and crazy my life was.
You couldn't even notice it.
Yeah, no.
We started talking about this from like waking up, and I do think that so many people's lives are structured in such a way, especially again because of the way that we have to work around kids' schedules and whatever. Most parents, if you're working outside the home, your work probably starts around 9 o'clock. Most people, right? And so you gotta, all that stuff I was just talking about, you gotta like get the kids ready and off to school, but you also gotta be out the door at 8:30 and ready yourself. And so it just creates like a stressful morning where you gotta be moving. This is personal theory here, but I personally think that so much of our culture's obsession with coffee is not as much about the caffeine and the impacts of the caffeine as it is about like by the time I'm able to sit down and drink my coffee, that's when I'm able to like sit down and kind of start to fully come online. That even if I didn't have the coffee, that's still when I would fully start to be able to come online, because I've been in emergency, like get stuff done mode until that point. And we just then create this association with, because caffeine does impact people, some people, differently than others, whatever. And certainly if you drink it a lot and then you go a morning without it and you get a headache or whatever, then you definitely notice the absence of it. So it makes sense that everybody's like, no, I need my coffee. When really, for the most part, it's like, no, I need a second to like actually wake up.
Right.
Go bust in on anybody and be like, wake up, gotta go. And like, they'll get moving right away. You can look up like dumb prank videos on YouTube where people do this. And like, people will be like 30 seconds into doing whatever you're yelling at them to do before they're like, wait, what the hell? Like, what's going on?
Right.
Yeah. That's why we use the mansion metaphor to try and make this point to people. Is like
the mansion metaphor. Yeah, go ahead.
You're working on something new. Things are better, so you work on something new. And then a more official way of talking about this is to talk about the zone of proximal development, which is a concept from Lev Vygotsky, which basically is just like, there's what you've mastered, and then there's the stuff that like you can almost kind of do, or with the right support or in the right contexts you can accomplish, but you haven't mastered it. That's the zone of proximal development. So you do that stuff, but after you do it enough, you've mastered that. And so your circle expands. But there's still that zone outside of like, here's the stuff that like you can only do with the right support or in the right context. So no matter how much you master, there's always that same next step of like, well, so things don't get easier, but they do get better. As a general rule in people's lives, things get, again, general rule, there are exceptions, but over time, the trend is that things in your life get better, but they don't get easier. And and this by easier, you want to say like more comfortable or whatever, but this is Maslow's hierarchy of needs kind of thing, right? You address this problem. When that problem is addressed, once you have enough food and water, then you move on to like, okay, do I have safety and security in my shelter? And if you have that, then it's like, okay, what are my social relationships? And if you have that, then you don't ever stop solving problems. You just move on to different ones.
Yeah, you sure do. I had a moment of thinking of all the mansions. And also, I don't know if you noticed, I like the heat in my office. Brandon, maybe we need to talk about this. The heat gets really strong, and it like really it just got like really, really hot in here.
Well, I think the thermostat is just outside your door, isn't it? You can go check.
I'm going to go check. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't actually remember where it is, but it's in the hall over there somewhere. I want to keep talking, but I also don't want to like have her come back. Did you find it?
Yeah, I know where it is. Oh my gosh, it is.
What was it set at?
72.
Oh, that's what I like it at usually. Maybe you just have like a vent like right by you or something.
Yeah.
Oh, I guess it's over there. It's in the ceiling. Huh?
I don't know. I opened. No one's here. It's just me. I opened up the door a little bit because it got real warm for a second.
I like your sweater, by the way.
Thank you. It's funny because I wore that. You've said that to me before. The last time I wore this sweater. Thank you.
It's a good one.
Oh, this is random though. I don't know why this made me think of slow mornings, but another thing with like paying attention to my body and stuff. When you said the sweater thing, you're like, even something as like simple as the clothes I wear. I feel like I used to wear a lot of like, not on purpose, but just more like more tight material, not as soft, kind of like, I can't think. So I don't know, when you said this sweater, I purposely picked out this sweater because I was had a rough few days, and I was like, this sweater is going to be so comfy and I love it. And it just reminded me of that. Even those things too, I've noticed like I need to start kind of putting some clothes here and keeping it here, but I'll bring like different shirts and sweaters to work. And Jeff's like, are you moving in there? My fiance is like, why do you have all these things? And I never realized how much like different clothes can like set a different mood or make me feel different. So I have like different cardigans, different shirts,
Yeah.
little things. It's
Yeah.
great.
Again, like so much of this stuff is stuff that like is so universal that it's common, but like the understanding of it isn't necessarily common, right? Like the idea of dressing differently for work than you do for your personal life or whatever is most people do that, whether it's because you have a uniform or because you know, you dress business casual or wear a suit or a dress or whatever, you know. Mr. Rogers gets home and changes into his cardigan and his sneakers, you know, like. But this is how humans work: is that if somebody figures something out, they can spread it without having to each individual person having to figure it out on their own. But
can you repeat that last sentence? I heard figure.
But if somebody figures something out, they can spread that to other people without each individual person having to figure it out on their own. And you can spread it without people having to understand the reasoning. If you're just like, hey, try this, and people do it, and they're like, this is great. And then they go and they tell other people, try this. And if everyone's like, why? They're like, I don't know, because this is the effect it has, is why. Why does it have that effect? I don't know, it just does. Or sometimes they try and make it up, you know, because of whatever moral this or, you know, unknown that. But there's all this stuff that like, it's nice when one of my favorite things is in my work, I'll come to a conclusion. I'll be working through something and be like, oh, you know what? I guess if that's true and that's true, then this must be, and I'll arrive at something. I'm like, that's brilliant. I just figured something out. I'm like, wait a second. That's a very common saying that I've heard a million times. And I just never actually understood that this is what people meant by that.
Yep. Yeah.
So like everyone's been trying to tell me this forever.
Yeah, I get that a lot. I mean, even when I say I have epiphanies in here, like, and all my friends and family know this, like I constantly have it when I'm talking with them all the time. And it just, something just finally clicks, which I think is kind of cool because I feel like I've always had, wow, another having epiphany about an epiphany. Good God. Jesus. I will, what was I going to say? I lost it with that. Give me a sec. Oh, about like when I like I'm talking with someone and I think something, I realize I always used to do that. I was always making so many connections, but I never thought it was worth saying anything. Sometimes I was like, oh, whatever, I made a connection, cool. But one, I always just forgot it because I feel like if I say it out loud, I'm like, oh, I made a connection, and I say it. One, it makes me remember and help, and also it like helps other people. Like I'm like, why am I being like this person that's holding all these connections when I can help the other people?
That's which also makes you like remember them better because you have reason to remember them and you use them so you can build on. Like people will ask me about like how I construct all this or philosophy or like know all these different things. And a big part of that is I'm a therapist, which is nice because it means that like when I come to a conclusion or I hear something, it's not just like, is that potentially helpful to me? It's also like, is that potentially helpful to a client? And there's a lot of stuff that is. And so all these things then they click and I you know, like we all have these musings. We all have things we think about and problems we're like noodling on or whatever. But usually when it's this kind of stuff that we're talking about, usually that's not like super relevant to your work at all.
Right.
And really not very relevant to like any practical, you know, like it all feels very abstract. But for us, that the abstract is very practical a lot of the time.
Yeah.
There's a comment here. I have a bit of a personal policy of the worse I feel, the better I dress, because if I at least cosplay that I have my act together, I feel a little better.
Oh, I like that. That's true.
I mean, there's a concept that I'm sure we've referenced on the stream before. I have something in my eye, I think, or my contacts bugging me, called act as if. That you identify like, okay, here's what's happening and it sucks. I don't like it. I'm super anxious or whatever, right? And then you can go through, okay, what if you weren't? Like what first think about what do you want to be? I wish I was feeling very calm and energized and driven or whatever. Mm-hmm. Okay. And if you were, what would you then do? Mm-hmm. Well, if I was, then I would, I don't know, write that email or go to the gym or whatever. And so we then just say like, okay, well, act as if you are. Act as if you're confident or whatever. Just do that thing. Or like in this case, you know, if I was feeling better, I'd like put myself together and present in a certain way. So act as if you are, meaning just do the thing that you would do if you felt that way. Mm-hmm. at the worst, you've now still done the thing that like feeling that way makes better, right? Like it's not just that feeling calm is more pleasant than feeling anxious. It's also that if I'm calm, I do this and this and this, which is better than doing this and this is what's happening when I'm anxious.
Right.
So even if how you feel doesn't change, you're still at least doing the good stuff. But most of the time, if you act as if you are calm, you will become calm and the feeling itself will change as well.
Mm-hmm.
So dressing like that is one of the act as if you have your stuff put together, or however you want to phrase it. There's common advice of like dress for the job you want, not the job you have, which I think people mostly interpret through the lens of then other people will see you that way and offer you promotions, which I'm sure that's a lot of what people are intending to convey. But to me, I interpret that partly as like when you dress a certain way, it pulls you in that direction in terms of what you do.
Right.
Like if I'm wearing a tuxedo, I'm not going to like lounge, lay down on the couch or whatever. Right. I mean, I've never worn a tuxedo, but.
Really?
I guess that's not true. For weddings, I guess those are tuxes, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And prom. I've never worn like, I was thinking of like bow tie and like tails, but no, I've worn tuxedos. Yeah, formal clothing, like it makes you feel different. When you're wearing athletic clothing, it makes you move differently and feel differently. This stuff, it impacts you. And some of it is not conscious at all, right? Like wearing different kinds of shoes, just even if there was no conscious element or emotions or whatever, you're going to walk differently based on how those shoes are. You're going to stand differently. Your feet will feel different, whatever. Mm-hmm. But then some of it does impact consciousness. It starts to bleed into like, man, I look so fancy, or what, like, yeah, we're shaped by our environment. We're shaped by the things that happen around us. We respond to stimuli. So act as if, or dress for the job you want, or whatever. Some of that is like for me, for us, right? When I first got the office that you're at now, Margaret, it was there were two different offices I could rent, and this was back when I had first started doing this. And one was tiny. It was like just one office and a little waiting area. Mm-hmm. And I didn't have anybody else working with me at the time. It was just me. So I could have taken that one. Or there's the one that we have. And at that point, it had 3 offices, four rooms. But at the time, I was thinking of it as 3 offices, 1 conference room, and then a waiting area. And I didn't need that. And it was more expensive. I was like, if I get the office that's just me, like I'm not going to have anything pulling me in the direction of trying to hire other people or bring other people on. I couldn't even fit them if I wanted to, where if I have that bigger office, it's going to be like, I got to get this stuff filled up. Right. Right now, on the other side of the hall behind you are 2 empty offices that you see every day. And it's like, oh man, we got to get those things filled. Mm-hmm. So you, obviously to the extent that you're able, right? Like not everyone can afford something that is more than what they need at the moment, but it pulls you in that. Like, literally, I sat down and I did the math of like, if I filled these offices and those people were to see X number of clients, and it was like, no, I will end up being like, it'll work better for us financially, right, to get this bigger place if we fill it up by X time or whatever. So same thing. There's a lot of things where we invest, whether it's money or time or energy or whatever, we invest on the front end with the idea of what it will pay off for us later. Right. So acting as if you have confidence even when you don't is much more difficult than acting as if you have confidence when you do, because then it's automatic. It's more difficult. It takes extra effort and energy, but you do it with the idea that like I'm investing into, if I do this, I will then feel that way and it will become easier. Mm-hmm. Another comment here. Sorry, go ahead.
Why can't I? No, I'm sorry. Oh, there. Oh my gosh. No, go ahead. I always forget where. Go ahead.
Says, yeah, I think it also helps me that if I don't think it's obvious to other people that I'm having a rough time, it's easier to act as if I'm not having a rough time, which helps me actually not be having a rough time. So go ahead, Margaret.
No, I was just gonna. So hold on. I hear you when you read it, but then I need to like double read it.
Sure.
No, I just want to say I relate to this so much because I feel like I don't know about you, but I feel like I always feel like, oh, people can tell that I'm anxious. People can tell that I'm whatever. And it's funny because I will like tell a friend or tell someone like, yeah, I was like really anxious when I did that earlier. And they were like, really? Like what? What are you talking about? And so even just hearing that after the fact too makes me feel better because I think, and I just speak for myself, the biggest thing I think that fuels my anxiety is people knowing that I am, or me feeling like, oh, I'm acting or being in such a way that they're picking up on that. And so, yeah, I feel like when it's not obvious to other people, I can kind of really embody that. I hate to say it, but like the fake it till you make it thing, but then it does end up making me not in that mood. So I like
Yeah,
that.
there's nothing nothing to hate about saying that. Fake it till you make it. That's another version of act as if. Like that's a very useful. I also sometimes talk about it as throw your hat over the wall, which in my understanding is an old Irish or Scottish phrase. That just means like when you get to a wall that's big enough, you're not sure if you can climb it. You throw your hat over because now you have to climb it because you got to go get your hat, right?
Mm-hmm.
That stuff works, and I want to be clear that we're not fake it till you make it really works. Yes, absolutely does. Now, does it work every single time? No, and we don't want to. I don't want to make it sound like what we're saying is just always, ignore how you feel and act as though you're not feeling that way, because that's not sustainable. You can't do that all the time. And your feelings are important, but there's a balance, right? Our culture has a tendency to simplify everything to just one, like this is how stuff is. And whenever that, love the hat thing, whenever that falls short, we then develop like, hey, there's this other point too. And we then tend to, in our culture, get stuck in this binary way of thinking. Right. So it's like, your feelings don't matter, hustle, whatever, stop whining. Mm-hmm. And now you see that has problems with it. So then we talk about, no, people's feelings do matter. And then it starts to turn into this binary culture-wide where some people go way too far in that direction and talk about like, no, feelings matter way more than everything else.
Right.
And it's a balance. We wouldn't have both things if it wasn't optimal to have both things, right? You have your body and the impulses and the feelings that go along with it. You have your mind and the logic and the ideas that go along with it. Sometimes it's optimal for us to go with our impulses, which in this we're talking about, it includes like how we feel. Sometimes it's optimal for us to go with our thoughts. And so sometimes it's important when if you're like, no, I should be really working, that's the thought, but your body's like, I'm exhausted or I'm depressed or whatever. Well, we might want to listen to the body on that one.
Right.
Other times though, you're like, oh, I really should do this. I'm feeling exhausted or depressed, but I'm like, man, if I don't do this, I might die. Then that's probably important to listen to the thought and do that thing, even if, you're not feeling up to it and it's exhausting. See, that's the thing. This is a comment. See, that's the thing to me where people emphasize how important it is to feel your feelings all the time. Listen, I'll feel my feelings when this project is done. I like that. Although there's reason for any advice that's common, there's reason for it. And in this case, there are downsides, there are costs. There's costs to everything, but there are costs associated with ignoring your feelings. Mm-hmm. Again, sometimes that's still the better thing to do anyway. If you listen, sometimes, here's one that's come up with a lot of our conversations recently, right? Like sometimes your feelings are not actually proportionate or appropriate to the context, especially if you are someone who has experienced trauma or whatever version of it you want to talk about, that like I've been through some stuff and therefore I now respond to things in this kind of a way. Mm-hmm. If you know that, what that means is that you are identifying that the way that I feel is based, at least in part, on stuff that happened in the past, not what's happening right now. So that likely means that there are times where you're scared more than it is actually worth being scared, because you're responding to stuff that happened in the past. And so then if you're going to listen to your feelings every time, which is feels better, right? If I'm scared, I don't do the thing or whatever. It feels better in the moment. Well, if that's an inaccurate assessment of what's going on, then that's probably not going to work out with you over time, right? We can only do what we can afford to do. right? This isn't to say like ignore your feelings and do anything that you think is a good idea.
Mm-hmm.
But it is to say that what we're trying to do is identify when going with a thought over your feelings and impulses is beneficial, and when going with a feeling or an impulse over your thoughts is beneficial. Not that it's always better to do one or the other.
Mm-hmm. I have something I want to say with that, but I know there's another comment. I don't think it's all that unhealthy to repress things or not linger on the thoughts all the time. I think lingering on how bad you feel often makes you feel worse, not to say you should ignore the feeling. No, absolutely.
I think there's truth to that. Absolutely. And there's a concept in there of healthy, unhealthy that is worth discussing, but we have to wrap up in the next 10 minutes, so maybe not today. But yes, no, sometimes it's important, right? Like, again, if we can do it, then theoretically it is sometimes the best thing to do. If you are able to do whatever we're calling repressed feelings, then sometimes that's the best thing to do. Otherwise, why would we have that ability?
Mm-hmm.
If you can feel your feelings, then sometimes that must be the best thing to do. Otherwise, why would we have that feeling?
Right.
And it's about trying to identify which is which.
I just want to say with that, I mean, I think what you were saying, but no, for me, I think, because I think both of them are good. They can be utilized good depending on the situation. And this is, I don't know why what I'm about to say. I know that it's like a good thing, but it's so exhausting. Is like so much trial and error, so much tracking of things to do. And that's the thing that I fault on myself too, where I'm like, well, it worked that one time. And it's like, well, these situations are different, like, well, I felt my feelings and like, that was good. So why isn't it working? Like it is constantly tracking it and like noticing those patterns. Like I guess wrong all the time. I did it the last few days. I'm like, oh, I'm going to try this. Did it work? Not a chance. Felt worse. But now we know.
This is why I emphasize so much, like, we are limited. Humans are limited. We are not perfect. We're not even theoretically capable of being anything close to it. So it doesn't matter if it's accurate. It matters if it's useful. Whether you're right about what's going on doesn't matter. Whether what you are doing impacts things in the way that you want, that matters.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're trying something and things are going worse or the same, then even if you're like, no, that's definitely, I've understood this correctly. Well, then even if that's true, let's try something else anyway, because it's not. All models are wrong. Some models are useful. We're just trying to find the useful ones.
Yeah.
So people are too concerned about being correct instead of just figuring out what's useful, which is all we can do.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, sometimes just linger on how bad you feel makes you feel worse, especially if, I'll say this because this is a common thing that comes up a lot. Again, general rule here, right? Because there are exceptions to everything where like some people feel pain when there's nothing. I'm talking about physical pain. There are things that can happen to a person's nerves or nervous system or whatever, where they can feel pain as though they're being stabbed, even though they're not being stabbed. So sometimes these feelings arise inappropriately, right? Disproportionately to what's going on. So it's absolutely true that a person can feel depressed or anxious or scared or angry or any of these things in ways that are not called for by the situation, which is why we want to be judicious about like how we balance, listen to our feelings versus paying attention to what's going on. But as a general rule, ignoring that, when you're feeling anxious, that is a signal that's associated with like, it would be good for you to do something. In the same way that when you're feeling when you're feeling hungry, that's a signal that your body is sending to your consciousness as like, it would be good for us to eat. Mm-hmm. And when you feel tired, that's a signal that's indicating it would be good for us to rest. When you're feeling anxious, that is generally a signal that is saying it would be good for us to take action. When you're feeling depressed, that is a signal that is generally saying it would be good for us to rest. But because those are both unpleasant experiences, especially because they've both been pathologized, that like anxiety is a bad thing that someone should not feel, for example, or depression is a bad thing someone should not feel, which fine, depending on how you use that, whatever. But because they're both unpleasant and because they're both like unhealthy or pathologized or whatever, we lump them together as being a signal that indicates the same thing. When different things are different, right? Like if you're feeling very depressed, that correlates, yes, a lot with exhaustion. Again, different people use words differently and things go out of whack all the time, but like everybody's sad when sad stuff happens, right? Everybody's tired when it's a good time to rest, and everybody's energized when it's a good time to get moving, or it's a good time to move because you're energized, or however you want to say it. Anxiety generally is one that you don't want to do more rest for, which is I'm calling that out because that's a very common mistake in our culture, is that people will be like, doing this thing or thinking about doing this thing makes me very anxious, so I shouldn't do the thing.
Mm-hmm.
Which usually, if thinking about doing something makes you very anxious, then it doesn't mean always do it. There's costs and there's risks and whatever, but it usually means that there's some value to it. Otherwise, it'd be pretty easy to just move on from like, well, so I just won't do that thing. And you wouldn't be anxious about it. But if thinking about not doing it, you're still anxious. Quite literally, a lot of the time when we're talking about anxiety, we're talking about adrenaline being dumped into the bloodstream or whatever, which is stuff, call it fight or flight. That's stuff that puts you in the mode for taking action.
Mm-hmm.
Prefrontal cortex shutdown makes it so that you're bad at thinking because you're shifting resources towards taking action, not thinking. And if we respond to that by being like, I'm going to think about this, then that usually goes really badly and gets worse.
Yeah.
So that's why I try to be so precise with my language, is because it's not that like being anxious is better or worse than being depressed. We're not trying to compare these things. It's that they're different, and therefore different responses are called for.
Mm-hmm.
In the same way that if you just call all food, that's going to cause you some problems, because there's different kinds of food and you should treat it differently. There are different ways of preparing it, different amounts that are good for you or bad for you to have, different. You might be allergic to some and not others. But if you lump it all together, then you go and eat something and you have an allergic reaction. And you're like, what is wrong with me that I can't eat food without having an allergic reaction?
Right.
So yeah, sometimes paying attention to your bad feelings doesn't help anything and just makes you feel worse. Sometimes paying attention to your bad feelings makes you feel worse and is helpful and good to do.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes paying attention to your bad feelings makes you feel better, but only, to be clear, only if you communicate about them or take action based on them. Thinking about the bad feelings never makes you feel better. Sometimes it is worth doing and it's useful. Never makes you feel better, though.
Right. Language is important. Very much is. I know it sounds like a very blanket statement, but no, I'm kicking myself in the butt because in my own life, language is very, very important. I mean, even when you say like the things with food, like even me, like, figuring out like the physical stuff with my body and being like, okay, well, if you are feeling this physical anxiety every freaking day at 12 o'clock, no matter what you're doing, maybe that's something to look into.
Yeah.
Possibly.
I mean, again, anxiety is an example that we come to a lot, both because it's like personally relevant, but also because it is, if anyone doesn't know, anxiety is by far the most common thing that people will go to therapy for, way more than depression, which is number 2. Mm-hmm. It's hugely common in our culture, and there are reasons for that. So we talk about anxiety a lot, and a lot of that has to do with like how we label things, right? That if like young kids, when they're eating food that they don't like, will often say, I'm allergic to it. And they just mean like, I don't like that thing, which is a completely valid conclusion to come to when that's your experience, right? You've never had an allergic reaction or really have a good concept of what it is. You just know that your body responds in nice ways when you eat some things and unpleasant ways when you eat other things. And you hear this concept of being allergic, it makes sense. Right? So same thing, our culture talks about anxiety a lot, and we ascribe so many, like straight up, just ask anybody who's ever talking about anxiety, you yourself, right? Is anxiety, are you talking about the physical state of feeling anxious, or are you talking about a cognitive, like a set of thoughts? And right off the bat, you'll notice everybody uses it to mean both of those things at different times.
Right.
Sometimes when I'm saying I'm anxious, I mean I'm thinking about something that I'm nervous about how it will go. It could go different ways, and it's really important to me that it goes this way or it doesn't go that way. Sometimes when I say I'm anxious, I mean like I feel like my heart is racing and I'm like having a hard time getting a breath. And I call those both anxiety, which is fine. This isn't about like using words correctly or incorrectly. It just means whatever those two different things are, whatever will help them is probably two different things.
Right. Absolutely.
And so you develop stuff that helps with the thoughts, then you try it with the physicality and it doesn't work. And you're like, dang it, I thought I had my anxiety figured out. And it's different stuff.
Right. I feel bad because I do have to go. I
Yeah,
have
I
a,
gotta go too.
I need to wrap it up for me though.
No, I also have to go. I appreciate you calling out to. I'll read these. You can head out. I'm going to read these comments
I
real quick and then wrap up.
will see you
No,
all.
thank you.
I'll see you all next week. Have a good rest of your day.
See you next week. Good to be with you. Getting stung by bees makes me pass out. There must be something wrong with me. Maybe I should keep hanging out with bees and eventually I'll be normal. Yeah, obviously not the same. I just thought it was a funny connection talking about allergies. Yeah, I mean, it kind of is the same, honestly, right? Like, especially because some of these things are things where like it's universal, but nobody talks about it. Like Margaret and I were both mentioning you using the bathroom earlier, which is something that everybody does and is actually, I mean, if you think about it, the major task of most living organisms every moment of their life is to make sure that they have enough of the right food in them, right? Like digestion, eating and digesting and eliminating waste so that you're clearing out more room to eat and digest. Like it's an incredibly important thing. We just happen to be fortunate enough to live at a time in history or in a culture where for most people, getting enough food is not a concern that you need to think about constantly, right? Like it's not a 24 hours a day, like if I don't have food, I might die tomorrow thing. Again, obviously exceptions, whatever. But that combined with some other stuff, like we all, again, most of us go to school and you can't just go to the bathroom whenever you want, like you raise your hand and say you need to use the bathroom and sometimes you can go and sometimes you can't. And it's not just about school and stuff like that. It's also about convenience. We use indoor plumbing, which is way better than what it used to be of, when humans would just use the bathroom wherever they were or whatever time. Indoor plumbing is way better, but it also means that you got to like use it. You don't use the bathroom unless you have access to that indoor plumbing, a toilet or whatever. And again, we're used to this. Same with the food part of it. We just take it for granted, not thinking about like this is not what our bodies, including our nervous systems, is not what we were evolved for. I always find it fascinating that people are very interested in Freud's like psychosexual development stuff, the anal retentive stage and whatever, the Oedipus complex, because it's about sex and ooh. But Freud also had a ton of, I almost said a crap ton of work, which would have been funny, had a ton of work, a ton of emphasis on toilet training, right? Like, again, that happens when we're so young that most people don't remember it consciously. So then we live our lives as though it wasn't a thing. But training a person to use their body in this way, this like structured and regimented way, is not easy. It's not what we're meant for. It has its upsides. It has its costs to it too, but the upsides way outweigh the costs. We have collectively decided, and I individually stand by, that like, yes, I would rather pay the price of like sometimes being in distress because I don't have access to a bathroom, if it means that we have like, indoor plumbing and sewage management and we're not all getting like typhoid all the time and whatever. I don't know if typhoid is one of those, whatever, doesn't matter. I gotta wrap it up. Point is, this stuff we're doing is like reading also. These are very complex things. We just learn them so young that we forget. Walking is a complex thing. Like these are very difficult, complex things. And because we think of them as so basic and we don't remember them, then we go about our life and we're like, hey, I feel this kind of way. I feel that kind of way. We're never like, nobody ever talks about pooping and how that impacts your mood, right? We talk about the eating part of it. I'm hangry or whatever. But like being backed up, if you have to keep eating food, but things are not moving through your system quickly, that means you have more stuff inside of you than you are meant to have. And that creates pressure, including that it can lead to reflux, which people often identify as anxiety. Because again, we don't think it could have anything to do with pooping and peeing. Maybe about eating, but often we don't think about that either. So it's like, no, there's something psychological. Why am I feeling this like weird sensation here? Sometimes you're so full or like backed up or some combination thereof that it even starts to put pressure on like the diaphragm, making it harder to like keep the lungs clear of all that pressure. can make it feel like it's harder to get a full breath and stuff, et cetera, et cetera. Listen, it's just, thanks for the stream. Listen, it's just you and me here right now. I try to keep my own cursing down for the sake of the stream. Freud had a lot of ideas. Yeah, he did. I just think it's hilarious that like all his stuff about like ego, people just talk about ego as though that's a thing, or the subconscious. Like that is just a full on, everyone accepts there is such a thing as the subconscious. They're not even talking about it the way Freud was, but that's a Freudian concept. And we love talking about the sex stuff that he talked about. We just ignore all the toilet training stuff that he also talked about because people don't like talking about that stuff. But yeah, like this stuff matters. Obviously, it impacts you. I want to talk more, but I gotta go. It's good to be with you all. We'll be back next week. Thank you.